The story kicks off with an ordinary morning in town, but for a high schooler and artist Mark, things are anything but normal. He's stuck in a loop, reliving the same day over and over again. Mark knows every little detail by heart. Watching his mom head off to work, having breakfast with his dad Daniel and sister Emma, and even predicting their conversations, like Emma inviting him to her soccer match, which he always declines. He's got his dad's crossword answers down pat, too. Throughout the day, Mark cruises through town on his bike, knowing exactly what everyone will do. Sometimes he steps in to prevent accidents, like grabbing a phone from a driver to avoid a crash, but mostly, he enjoys the loop, doing things like buying winning lottery tickets or goofing around on an excavator. School becomes a no-go for Mark, but he still makes time to help Phoebe, a girl he's crushing on. Every day, he stops by her spot to give directions, but he struggles to strike up a real conversation. In the afternoons, he's at the pool, swooping in to save Phoebe from flying balls or falls. Sometimes he walks her home, but she never says yes to hanging out later. When Mark's frustration peaks, he hangs out with his buddy Henry, who's stuck on a tough video game level. Mark and Henry found themselves chatting one day, exploring the depths of imagination. Mark posed a curious scenario. Imagine getting stuck in a loop of time. What would you do? Henry pondered for a moment before sharing a heartfelt response. He expressed his desire to win over the heart of his beloved, confident that with infinite chances, success was inevitable. Yet, he wisely acknowledged the toll such repetition would take on one's spirit, emphasizing the importance of breaking free from the cycle. Mark, perhaps masking his vulnerabilities, painted a picture of grandeur, proclaiming mastery over the world in such a scenario. In truth, Mark grappled with moments of solitude, particularly when facing difficult conversations with his father. Despite his bravado, loneliness lingered in his heart. Undeterred, Mark pursued Phoebe daily at the pool, hoping for a breakthrough. However, one fateful afternoon, Margaret intervened, disrupting the familiar routine. Intrigued by this unexpected twist, Mark trailed her as she departed, but his attempts to connect were thwarted as she vanished into the distance. With each repetition of the loop, Mark's quest intensified. He searched tirelessly for Margaret, yearning to find solace in companionship. Yet, she remained elusive, leaving him to contemplate the possibility of shared captivity. Waiting by the pool proved fruitless, as did reaching out through the lost dog flyer she had left behind. Despite numerous setbacks, fate intervened when Mark stumbled upon forgotten treasures in a restaurant. Mark hurried outside, his heart racing with anticipation. He found Margaret leaning against the wall, and a sense of relief washed over him. Nervously but determined, Mark asked about the time loop, and Margaret confirmed she was stuck in it too. They chatted awkwardly, agreeing it felt like they were the only ones awake in a world asleep. Margaret wanted to leave, not keen on making friends with Mark, but he convinced her to stay a bit longer by sharing some funny things he'd discovered around town, like a dog stealing a man's phone. When Margaret received an important call, she had to go, but Mark managed to get her number so they could stay in touch. Before the clock struck midnight and the day reset, Mark memorized Margaret's number. In the following loops, he experimented with different hairstyles and sent her pictures, but she only responded when he asked her to meet up. Gradually, they began opening up to each other, with Mark revealing he had only attended summer school twice. Mark harbors a deep-seated aspiration to attend art school, but his parents have their hearts set on steering him toward honors math. He yearns for the time loop to spare him from the inevitable discussion about the future that Daniel, his father, plans to have. Meanwhile, Margaret, enrolled in advanced placement classes, nurtures dreams of venturing into space as an astronaut. Amidst the chaos of repetition, they find solace in sharing their escapades. Mark recounts his daring escapades, from hopping freight trains to cycling through school corridors, while Margaret, in her bold endeavors, challenges herself with the chess app and even attempts driving after borrowing her friend's car. However, her true passion lies in the enigmatic forest on the outskirts of town, a place she eagerly shares with Mark. Together, they witness a mesmerizing spectacle of nature as a bird gracefully snatches a fish from the lake, leaving them both in awe. Their bond deepens as they exchange stories and adventures. Margaret graciously offers Mark a ride home, only to be interrupted by yet another urgent call, this time from someone named Jared. As the loop resets, Mark seizes the opportunity to share an experience with Margaret, introducing her to the skateboarding culture of the town. Amidst the mediocre performances, they are captivated by a skater's skillful maneuver, reminiscent of the bird's graceful catch. Later, they embark on an unconventional journey, riding a steamroller through the streets, while Mark's curiosity about Jared gnaws at him. Despite Margaret's reluctance to divulge much, she reveals he is a medical student. Mark and Margaret were enjoying a mountain of fast food and ice cream at a restaurant when Mark shared a profound thought. He believed that life is mostly filled with mundane stuff, but amidst it all, there are moments of sheer brilliance waiting to be discovered if we only look for them. Inspired, Mark suggested they start a quest to uncover all the small, perfect things in their town. Margaret wasn't initially convinced, preferring to simply coast through life, but she relented when Mark reminded her that they only have each other and their shared experiences should hold meaning. Their journey began by leaving random dollar bills for strangers while discussing theories about the fourth dimension, a concept Margaret found intriguing yet elusive. She even drew a 4D cube on a store window to illustrate her point. From there, they spent their days exploring their town, seizing unique moments like witnessing an elderly woman dance in joy after winning a card game, seeing a man seemingly grow wings when a van pulled up behind him, and watching a janitor pause his work to play the piano. Margaret also made sure to drag Mark to the library occasionally to teach him math, adding a touch of learning to their adventures. But no matter how magical their days became, Margaret always left abruptly when she received a call from Jared, even though she secretly wished for time to stand still forever. After a fun-filled evening teasing his dad and showing off his new tattoo, Mark wakes up with a burning curiosity about Jared. A quick internet search only leaves him feeling small when he discovers Jared's picture as a hospital staff member. Seeking advice, Mark turns to his friend Henry for help with his growing feelings for Margaret. Henry suggests a stealth date strategy, starting with casual hangouts and gradually adding romantic touches until the perfect moment for a kiss arises. After much planning and some bribes to the art department kids, Mark surprises Margaret with a trip to his school gym, transformed into Tranquility Base. They spend the day pretending to be astronauts, munching on astronaut food, and even riding a bicycle through the school halls. Later, at Mark's house, he shares more about his family with Margaret, his hardworking mom whom he rarely sees due to her busy schedule, and his dad who's now writing a book about the Civil War. Margaret, however, avoids talking about her own family. Instead, they opt for a cozy movie night, during which Margaret admires Mark's art and discovers a map he's drawn marking all the special moments they've shared around town. Mark impresses Margaret with his dedication to making breakfast every morning, hoping to find a hidden pattern. As they share a sweet moment over the map, Mark leans in for a kiss, but Margaret pulls away, citing their situation and the need to avoid complications. Mark, feeling hurt, suspects Jared's involvement and pushes Margaret for answers, causing her to snap and explain her fear of messing up their bond. Reluctantly, Mark agrees to remain friends, and Margaret leaves to attend her usual phone call. In the next cycle, Mark's mood sours, and he forgoes his breakfast predictions. Seeking solace, he confides in Henry, who struggles to comprehend Mark's emotional turmoil, adding to Mark's frustration. Returning home, Mark faces a confrontation with Daniel about his future, leading to a heated argument where Mark vents his frustrations about time being broken and his perceived unfair treatment compared to his father's midlife crisis book endeavor. Seeking refuge from Emma's violin practice, Mark retreats to her room, asking her to stop. After Emma finishes her violin practice, she inquires about Mark's conversation with their father. Mark confides his frustration about not being able to pursue his dreams like his dad did. Emma reveals the truth: their father was fired from his job, a fact he's too ashamed to admit, leaving their family in a tight financial spot. Their mother is angry but refrains from speaking out, and their father secretly supports Mark's desire for art school, but finances are a barrier. Emma encourages Mark to consider others' perspectives for a change. Feeling remorseful, Mark shifts the conversation to Emma's soccer game, where her team suffered a loss. In the next loop, Mark seeks guidance from his algebra teacher, Mr. Pepper, who barely remembers him due to his infrequent attendance. Mark discusses various theories about the time loop, ranging from wormholes to magical curses, but Mr. Pepper suggests the concept of singularity as a plausible explanation. Mark becomes convinced that escaping the loop is as simple as boarding a plane and flying away. During their next encounter, Mark and Margaret realize they've exhausted all the perfect moments in town, yet time remains stagnant. Mark grows frustrated, longing for permanence and a career beyond the loop. To distract him, Margaret takes him to a show house, where they gleefully wreak havoc. Despite the fun, Mark insists on leaving the loop once they're finished. Margaret argues that adulthood is merely monotony, advocating for the freedom they enjoy in their current state. However, Mark counters, emphasizing the irreplaceable nature of time. Moved by his words, Margaret agrees to join Mark's plan. The following morning, they board a plane bound for Tokyo, but Margaret's nerves prompt her to flee while Mark is distracted. As the plane takes off without Margaret, Mark receives an apologetic text. Determined to make the most of the journey, he spends the flight creating art. As they approach the international dateline, Mark braces himself for what lies ahead, eager to discover the outcome of his bold decision. Disheartened by his failed attempt to break the loop, Mark finds himself back on the same day. However, he adopts a calmer demeanor, which garners positive responses from his sister and father. Mark's newfound politeness sparks pleasant interactions, leading to a friendly chat with Daniel about his book and attending Emma's soccer match where their team scores. Inspired to approach the loop differently, Mark embraces altruism. He gifts a winning lottery ticket, rescues a cat, dances with an elderly woman, applauds the janitor's music, and even attends algebra class, impressing Mr. Pepper thanks to Margaret's tutoring. Despite a mishap while attempting a skateboarding trick, Mark savors quality time with Henry and Emma. During a hospital visit for his broken wrist, Mark encounters Margaret and learns the heartbreaking truth behind her reluctance to leave the loop. Her mother Greta is battling cancer. In subsequent loops, Mark wakes up with a newfound empathy, rushing to embrace his mother and confide in Henry about Margaret's situation. Mark realizes the true protagonist of this story is Margaret, who longs for time to freeze so her mother can live. Meanwhile, Margaret seeks solace with her mother, contemplating missed opportunities. Greta offers reassurance, reminding her it's never too late to make amends. Later, Margaret finds herself losing at chess, pondering over the spot where she once experienced a perfect moment with angel wings. It's then she spots the missing dog roaming the neighborhood. Despite rescuing him, Margaret decides against returning him to his owner, knowing he'll be lost again the next day. This realization echoes Mark's sentiment. Everything they fix inevitably breaks once more. Instead of dwelling on the cycle, Margaret shifts her focus to helping Henry conquer a video game. Observing the character's repeated deaths and eventual success triggers a profound realization within her. Avoiding death leads to a loss of identity. Inspired by the game's map, Margaret recalls Mark's theory about perfect moments creating a pattern. Armed with a map of the town, she begins documenting every small detail, determined to uncover the elusive pattern herself. After meticulously reviewing each perfect moment and scrutinizing the map, Margaret senses something crucial is absent: time. Armed with string, she constructs a three-dimensional model representing the times and locations of these moments, ultimately forming the shadow of a 4D cube. Recognizing a missing vertex, Margaret conducts calculations and determines the final moment will occur at 7-page M. At the pool. In the next loop, Margaret confides in Greta, expressing her fears of losing her mother. Greta reassures her, encouraging Margaret to embrace life's perfect moments and reminding her of her inner strength to navigate through challenging times. After some contemplation, Margaret arrives at the pool a few minutes before 7, where she encounters Mark. She reveals her discovery about the pattern, but Mark admits he's aware of Greta's condition and chooses to remain in the loop to support her. Touched by his selflessness, Margaret confides a secret. She had wished for time to stop the night before the loop began. Upon learning of Greta's limited time, Mark's presence now makes sense to her. He's there to accompany her through her final moments. Realizing their previous stance was flawed, Margaret acknowledges their passive existence while others lived. She declares this moment as their last perfect one and shares a kiss with Mark. Subsequently, Margaret bids farewell to Greta at the hospital, with Mark by her side. As they wait for midnight, a sudden rain shower signifies their liberation from the loop. The following morning, Margaret and Mark reunite the missing dog with its owner, symbolizing a fresh start outside the confines of the loop.